and welcome to this joint IOF SKO webinar on frailty in nursing homes, the senior cohort. My name is Dominique Pierrot, I'm the Science Manager at IOF, and I'm delighted to moderate this webinar today. Before introducing the speaker of the day, I would like to encourage you to ask your questions during the webinar by typing them in the Q&A box, and I will voice them to the speaker by the end of this webinar. I'm very glad today to welcome Dr. Olivier Bruyère, who is Professor of Clinical Epidemiology in the Department of Public Health Sciences and of Geriatric Rehabilitation in the Department of Rehabilitation and Sports Sciences at the University of Liège in Belgium. He is also head of the research unit in public health, epidemiology and health economics in this university. Professor Bruyère is president of the Belgium Aging Muscle Society, general secretary of the Belgian Bone Club, member of the IOF board and committee of scientific advisors, and chief executive officer of the European Society for Clinical and Economic Aspects of Osteoporosis, Osteoarthritis, and Musculoskeletal Diseases. His main fields of interest are prevention, rehabilitation, and pharmacoepidemiology related to geriatric or rheumatoid conditions. Besides being editor-in-chief of the Archives of Public Health, he is executive director of Aging Clinical and Experimental Research and on the editorial board of various journals. He is also author of more than 350 international scientific publications and book chapters. Professor Bruyère, thanks again for having accepted our invitation to present today, and we are now listening to your presentation.
Thank you very much. So this is indeed my privilege to discuss with you a frailty nursing home based on a cohort that my colleague Fanny Buckings has developed more than 10 years ago now. So this is my privilege to discuss that with you. I've got a minor competing interest because we have developed one tool that I will discuss later with you today. It's the GameOcean that is currently marketed by a spin-off of the University of Liège where I'm working. So what I would like to discuss with you today is, of course, the senior cohort, but also some cross-sectional association, mainly with the prevalence of frailty and all factors associated with frailty. We will also discuss the longitudinal studies based on this cohort, mainly the prediction of adverse health outcomes. And you will see that there are two main points that deserve a more exhaustive discussion, mainly in the management of frailty. It's nutrition and physical activity, and I will have the privilege to discuss with you what we have found in our cohort on the nutrition and physical activity levels. So let's start with a presentation of the senior cohorts. Senior stands for Sample of Elderly Nursing Home Individuals and Observational Research. As a matter of fact, it's a longitudinal study involving more than 600 subjects, residents from different nursing homes in Belgium, and the only inclusion criteria that we had was to be volunteers, of course, but to be also oriented and mobile. You will see that it will make somehow a quite unbalanced and non-representative sample of nursing home residents, but we will discuss it later on. And of course, we try to follow all individuals every year since 2013, and we collected a large number of social, demographic, and clinical data. And so we had 10 years ago two main objectives. The first was to improve the understanding, the risk factor, the consequences, and the dynamics of frailty And the second objective was to explore different strategies for the management of frailty. If we look at the baseline characteristic of our study samples, the population, we are of course in nursing home residence, so we are quite older, so a mean age of 83 years old, mainly women with a body mass index around 26, with a quite huge number of medication of drugs intakes, and as you can see from the cognition status, from the independent status of the nutrition status, we are of course in a nursing home. It means that we have a quite older population, already somehow frail, but we are not in a nursing home where we have included a lot of highly dependent individuals with a lot of frailty individuals. So you know that we are not fully representative, mainly because we had to sign an informed consent, and we also would like to have the patient able to perform some mobility test. So patient with mild or moderate cognitive impairment, or patients that are only able to stay in bed, we are not able to include this patient. So clearly our population is not really representative of the full population of nursing home in Belgium. Anyway, we have performed in our senior cohort some cross-sectional association, and the first thing that we did 10 years ago was to assess the prevalence of frailty, and we have used different diagnostic tools. As you can see on this slide, according to the diagnostic tool used, we have a very different number of subjects considered as being frail, with a prevalence of frailty ranging from 15% with the frail scale status and 83% with the frailty index. And if you look at the classical frailty phenotype, so the Freed definition, we've got 1/4 of the population that can be considered as frail. So of course we have a very low agreement between these 10 definitions. It means that we have one patient considered as frail with one tool and non-frail with one other tools. In our study population, in our next studies, we have mainly used the Freed definition, and with one or two analyses we have used the frailty index. But once again, it's very important to know that we've got a huge heterogeneity in the prevalence of frailty according to the diagnostic tools. Anyway, we have also tried to assess the prevalence of sarcopenia in our study population, and we've got the prevalence of sarcopenia in our total population of 38%, and of course we have more sarcopenic individuals in frail patients compared to pre-frail or robust individuals. And if we take into account all potential confounding variables, we are able to show that the probability of being sarcopenic when the patient is frail is increased by 2.30. We have also been able to assess the different components of the frailty status according to the Freed criteria, so the low level of physical activity, the slowness, the weakness, the exhaustion, and the weight loss. And you can see that the main driver of the frailty status was clearly a low level of physical activity and the weakness of the patient, and it's exactly the same for the sarcopenic individual. We've got a lot of sarcopenic individual with a low level of physical activity and a low weakness. In our cross-sectional association, we were also interested in the what we call the ages, so the attitude toward aging, so the perception of the older individuals. And so we assess ages with the attitude to aging questionnaire, the validated questionnaire. If you have an optimal perception of the aging, you've got a score of 100. And of course, if you have a poor perception, you have a lower score. And so we asked the resident of the nursing home, some frail, some preferent, some robust one, to complete this questionnaire. And clearly, the perception of the aging was poorer in frail individual compared to robust individual. And quite interesting, if we ask frail subjects to give the first 5 words they have in mind when they discuss older individual, you can see the words told by the frail subjects, and the size of the word is related to the number of times it was cited by residents. And you can see in green it's more positive wording. The blue is I would say balanced wording, and the red wine is more negative wording. And you can see that the first 5 words were very, very negative, with wording like dependent, alone, do not do things anymore, disinterest, missing energy, crying, rheumatism, and so on. So once again highlighting that the perception of aging is very, very poor in frail subjects. If we move now to the longitudinal studies, to the prediction of adverse health events in the senior cohort, of course we try to assess falls after 1 year. And so we assess all baseline characteristics, so clinical characteristics, demographic characteristics, and we try to see if they were predictive of falls after 1 year. And after adjustment for all potential covariates, we were able to see that the clinical characteristics, some clinical characteristics were related to the risk of falling, and this clinical characteristic was the TINETI test, so a test assessing the body balance of the patient, but also the quality of walking, but also the grip strength and the strength of the elbow extensor. So highlighting that one of the main drivers, the main predictors of falls after 1 year is the body balance, the quality of the wound, and the strength of the muscle. We also assess falls risk after 3 years of follow-up in the senior cohort, but this time we decided to have a look at the intrinsic capacities as recommended, as proposed by the World Health Organization, and the intrinsic capacities was in fact 5 domains: cognition, locomotion, sensory, vitality, and psychosocial domain, each of them being subdivided into different subdomains. And what we are able to show is in multivariables models, so taking into account all potential confounding variables, we've got two domains who are really associated with falls after 3 years. It was body balance and nutrition. And clearly, if you have a good body balance, you will experience less fall, and if you have an optimal nutrition status, you will also reduce your risk of fall, suggesting once again that factors that are modifiable, such as the body balance and nutrition, could play a very important role in adverse health events. We also have a look at the cost of drugs and cost of dietary supplements in a very small subset of our population, but what we can see is that the number of drugs consumed during 1 year was not different if we are taking into account the frailty status, so frail patient compared to non-frail patient, but the cost of the drugs seems to be slightly increased if we take into account the frailty status, so a higher cost in frail individuals compared to non-frail individuals, and it's especially the cost of the patient, so not the cost reimbursed by the social security. In Belgium, we have some chance to have some drugs reimbursed by the social security, by the government, but some of the cost is the cost directly for the patient, and here clearly we have more cost for frail individual, and it was the cost during 1 year of follow-up. We also looked at the frailty change over 1 year, and we have two groups of the patient. The group of patients with a deterioration of the frailty status, or another group with a stable status or an improvement in the frailty status. You should know that the frailty status is quite unstable over time, because it's not because you are frail that you will be frail over years. You can have some modification in your frailty status. But if you look at patients with an improvement or a stabilization of the frailty status, clearly they have a better nutrition, they have better gait speed, better locomotion, better grip strength, once again suggesting that some modifiable risk factors related to nutrition, related to functional status of the patient could play a very important role in the change in the frailty status of our nursing home residents. We had also the opportunity to assess the COVID-19 in our nursing home residents. Let's be clear, it's a very small study, because you know that it's most of the nursing home closed completely their doors. It was not possible for us to have a direct contact with the nursing home residents, or with the nurses, or with the director of the nursing home, but we have been able to have a direct contact with some nursing homes. So we have been able to have a real incidence of the COVID in these patients. And I would say quite surprisingly, and quite opposite to our hypothesis, the frailty status, the grip strength of the patient, or the nutritional status of the patient was not related to the incidence of COVID-19. However, other characteristics of the patient somehow related to the frailty status in some of the definition of frailty have been associated with incidence of COVID-19, its comorbidities, body mass index, and the number of medications. So clearly, the highest number of comorbidities or highest number of medication increased risk of COVID-19 the patient will experience. And regarding body mass index, if you have a higher body mass index, you will increase also your risk to experience COVID-19, as it was shown in other population non-resident of nursing homes. We also, of course, had the opportunity to have a look at mortality after 8 years of follow-up in our population. And by the way, I will show you after that we have also the mortality after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. We have publication about that. And here we've got data suggesting once again that after adjustment for all potential variables, confounding variables, some factors were predictor of mortality. It was the age of the patient, the highest age, the highest risk of mortality. The body mass index, if you have a high body mass index, you will decrease your risk of mortality over 8 years. We've got also the cognitive status. If you have a good cognitive status at baseline, you will decrease your risk of death. And we've got also the SPPB, so the functional status. And clearly, if you got an optimal status or a better functional status, you will decrease your risk to experience death compared to patient with a lower functional status. And once again, what's quite interesting in that study is to see that with the exception of age, body mass index, cognition, but especially functional status are modifiable risk factors, and you will see that we will discuss it later. And so, of course, we've got different publications related to mortality over the 8 years of follow-up. So we've got data on the mortality after 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years, and of course after 8 years. And basically, we can see that we have never exactly the same variables, but we've got the same kind of variables. So clearly, sarcopenia, functional status, muscle strength seems to be a predictor of mortality. Nutrition, body mass index are also important factors of mortality. And so, what we were able to show even after 1 or 2 year follow-up is that the functional status of the patient, the muscle strength of the patient, the nutrition of the patient seems to play a very important role in the adverse health outcome. So force of the patient, mortality of the patient. That's why we have decided to investigate a little bit further the nutrition and the physical activity in our senior cohort. And the first thing is that we decided to do is the assessment of the energy expenditure. So we put an indirect calorimetry apparatus in, and so we put it in the nursing home, and so we assess the basal metabolism for all for a sample of our population. So we assess the basal metabolism. We have a multiplication based on the physical activity level assessed with the Minnesota score, and we also calculated the thermogenesis that was 10% of the energy consumption. So we assessed the energy intake, the real energy intake of the patient. So we weighted all food of the patient or food intake of the patient in order to have a better understanding of the energy that's expended. So, of course, it's just an assessment, just with a global idea of the energy expenditure, but you can see that the energy expenditure and the energy consumption, the energy intake of the patient is more or less well balanced. So, and within the range of 1,600 kilocalories per day. And maybe that's what's very, very interesting to observe is that we still have some heterogeneity in the energy consumption, but also in the energy expenditure. So it's clear that at the global level, we can have the good information is that the energy consumption seems to be quite balanced with the energy expenditure, but we've got a difference in the population, and clearly we have patients with a higher energy expenditure, but with a low energy consumption, and probably that kind of individuals are much more at risk of future denutrition, and it's probably something very, very important. We also perform in another sample of our population exactly the same consumption, the same intake of the food. So once again, we calculated all food intake, we weighted all things consumed by the residents, and so we've got more or less the same data compared to our first initial studies. It means that we have an energy consumed, an energy intake of around 1,600 kilocalories per day, with a protein of around 0.9 grams per kilograms per day, and so it's quite below the nutritional recommendation. It's very, very clear for protein intake, it's clear for carbohydrates, it's clear for lipids, and it's clear for energy intake. So clearly the percentage of the subject resident in nursing home who achieve the nutritional recommendation is very, very low. But please take in mind that the nutritional recommendations are not highly specific of the nursing home resident, but it was still interesting. Still on the same study, we also have a look at the food and the food served by the nursing homes. So once again, we weighted the plate of the patient, and so we look at the total food served and then the total food consumed. So at the end of the meal, we again calculated the real intake. So we've got the food served and the food really consumed by the patient. And here also you can see that they apparently they are serving enough food, but once again at the mean level. Okay, once again we have some patients that need more calories, and probably that these patients are not served enough. But on a global point of view, in the global population, they are served more than their consumed food. We were also highly interested in the influence of environmental factor on food intake, because once again we saw that we've got patients, we've got some food in the plate, but they do not eat the whole food, and we hypothesize that some environmental factor could play some important role in the food intake. And so we decided to take some videos of the food intake of the patient, but also some videos of the environment of the nursing home during the meal. And so we've got different videos of, I would say, the dining room, on the real food intake, and we've got that for different nursing homes. And so we have asked, I would say experts, but it's not really expert. We have asked external people with some interest in geriatry to have a look at all these videos in different nursing homes, but also all these videos relate to the plate of the patient. And it's quite interesting to observe that quite opposite to our initial ideas, the noise of the nursing home, so the perception by external individuals of the noise of the nursing home, of the brightness in the dining room, of the apparent willingness to stay in this dining room, of the beauty of the plate. All these factors are not related to the food intake of the patient. So whatever the brightness, whatever the noise, whatever the beauty of the plate, the quality, the apparent quality of the food, it does not seem to be related to the real intake of the patient. The only factors that was associated to the real food intake of the patient was the perception by external expert of the quantity of the food served. So to make a long story short, if you give more to the subject, they will eat more. So you give more, they eat more. So it could be one of the potential action to be given if you would like to have a more intake of food in some of your patients. Give more food on the plate. They will probably eat more. Let's move now to the management of frailty with the physical activity. And we perform different things in the senior cohort. The first thing is that we perform an assessment of the level of physical activity. And so we asked volunteers, individual residents in nursing homes to wear people, so an activity trackers during 7 days. And we look at the number of steps each day. And you can see that the mean number of steps was around 1,700 steps per day. So it's far below the recommendation of the World Health Organization with the 10,000 steps per day. But you can see that you have once again a huge heterogeneity in the steps per day, so with some patient experience and practicing much more physical activity compared to other individuals. Once again, please have in mind that we are here in patients that accept to participate in that study, that have given their informed consent, so quite good cognition, and they are also active. So we are once again I would say in a small proportion, or I would say 40% of the residents of nursing. So we are not fully representative of the physical activity, but clearly they do not perform enough physical activity. But you know that at least in Belgium, and I presume that in most of the nursing homes worldwide, it's possible to participate in gym classes. So it's activity session, it's group activity session organized once or twice a week during, I would say, half an hour or 1 hour, and it's not under prescription. So if a patient, if a subject, if a nursing home resident would like to participate in the physical activity, they can go. Okay, And if they do not want to go, that's not a problem. And we try to compare, once again, energy expenditure using a validated questionnaire during group classes. So we have two groups of patients, participants in group gym class or non-participants. And we have a look at energy expenditure related to physical activity. And so during the week, clearly participants in group gym fitness classes spend more energy compared to non-participants. It means that it's not because they are participating in the fitness classes that they will have more rest during the rest of the day. Okay? If they are participating, they are still active during the rest of the day. So they use more energy. It means also that that kind of patient, maybe that some collation, some extra food intake can be used and can be given to the patient. We also look at the motivational climate to participate in all days, I would say, group physical activity classes session, and we are asked 100 nursing home residents from the senior cohort to complete a validated questionnaire to better understand the motivational climate, and so why they are participating. And clearly, what we can see from the ego-involving stage is that they do not do that to be better than the individual next to them. So they do not try to do better than the other in the gymnastic session. So clearly, it's not an ego-involving task. So they do not do that to do better than their other roommate, clearly. However, they would like to do the better. It's really what we call the task involving. So they do the better always. They do that for themselves because they would like to do. However, there are 2 points that deserve some attention. They clearly say that they do not agree that the staff encourage them to try new exercises or skills. So clearly they would like to have new exercises. So in a nursing home, having every week or every 2 weeks the same kind of exercises is really boring for them. So if you would like to keep them in these activity classes, you need to have new exercises. They also think that they would like to be rewarded when they try hard. Sometimes they do their best in order to, once again, for themselves, not to fight against the other. They do that for them, but please say that, hey, I saw today that you do your best and you improved compared to last time. Congratulations. It's apparent from this questionnaire. It's really something that must be highlighted. They would like to be rewarded when they try hard. And so we decided to, we know that physical activity is very important in nursing home. We've got activity classes, we've got some prescription of physical activity with the physical therapist. But we also decided to try something more fun. And we decided to have some physical activity contest, so a competition between 2 nursing homes. So, once again, we know that they do not like to to fight or to have a competition or a contest with the people just behind, just in front of them. However, maybe that a competition between two nursing homes could be interesting. And so we decided to do that. So we had a pre-test in all subjects accepting to participate in our physical activity session. And then we have three competition. Okay? Three competition. So they stay in their own nursing home, but we have a direct information of the results of one nursing home in the other nursing home. So they know in one nursing home the results of another nursing home. So three contests. So over a period of 3 months, so once a month, competition between the two nursing homes. And so we have different exercises for the body balance, for the gait speed, sit to stand performance, arm curl, and even the address test. And we first assess the feasibility of such kind of physical activity contest, assessing the adherence, the difficulty score, and the appreciation score. And so clearly what we have published is that clearly it's feasible because the adherence was quite high. Even after 3 months of follow-up, the appreciation was very, very high, and the difficulty score was not too high. We've got also other data, and I do not share it with you today because clearly we do not have a real control. But when we see the improvement in the body balance, in the gait speed, in the sit-to-stand balance, the arm curl or the adherence test, most of these tests have shown a huge increase in their score. So a huge improvement. Of course, we do not have a control group. So I would say that it's not a well-randomized control trial. However, we've got the information from the staff, from the nurses, from the physical therapists, that even between two contests, they try to do better. So they train themselves in order to improve their test, in order to win their game against the other nursing homes. So once again, we've got something here quite interesting, and of course we've got only 3 contests, but between these contests, the patients are still continuing to train and sometimes to train a lot. That's probably one of the explanations why we have so huge increase in the body balance, gait speed, and sit-to-stand performance tests. At last, I would like to discuss with you a tool that we developed 6 years ago now. It's the Game Motion tool. The Game Motion is a giant board game, so the dimensions are 2 meters by 5 meters, and you can see that you have different squares. And we've got squares, for example, the red wine, when you need to perform some walking exercises. You've got also the green one, where you must try to improve your stretching performance. You've got the yellow wine when you try to improve your muscle strength, and the mauve with which you try to improve the body balance of the patient. And you play it, and if you are on one specific square, you need to play with that square, and you need to perform the exercise on that square. And you've got also different difficulty level with the different stars. 1 star, 2 stars, or 3 stars. And so we try to validate this giant board game in a nursing home. And so we perform some randomized control trial with 1 month of follow-up. So randomized control trial with one duration of 1 month, and then a follow-up of patients during 3 months where we do not have a regular exercise of the game motion, but we keep the game motion in the nursing home. So if they would like to use the game motion, they can use it, but it's not with the help of the physical therapist or the nurses and so on. What we can see is that compared to the control group in the intervention group, so where they go 2 times a week in the using the game motion, we can see that you've got an increase in the number of steps per day, of course at the end of the intervention, but also after 3 months of follow-up without the need to go to the game motion tool. So they do it because they would like to do it. They play with the game motion because they would like to play with the game motion, but it was not mandatory. It was not necessary as in the first 1 month of the study. So we conclude from that first game motion study that the use of the game motion is able to increase the number of steps walked every day by nursing home residents. And we've got also another study. Let's be clear, it was quite a small study performed in nursing home, but clearly it was shown that even if this low number of subjects, we've got an improvement in the SPPB score if you use the game motion compared to the control group. We are also able to increase the dignity test, so the body balance test and the quality of the walking in the game motion group compared to the control group, and we are also able to increase to improve the time to perform the get up and go test. So probably that we are able to improve the motor capacity of the nursing home residents. So clearly, game motion is a very interesting tool for the improvement of physical activity in nursing home residents. So what I would like to do now is a very, very brief conclusion. I hope that I have been able to show you that with the senior cohort, we have been able to contribute to the natural history of frailty. We have also been able to assess the adverse health events and highlighting the importance of physical activity and nutrition to fight against the frailty in nursing home. And of course, I would like to thank once again my colleague, Dr. Fanny Buckings, who was really instrumental in the development of the senior cohort, in the participation in different studies. And clearly, thanks to her, we have been able to have some high quality papers. And of course, if you would like to have more information regarding the publication, regarding the different studies that we've performed in our center, if you would like to have some information regarding the game motion, do not hesitate to send an email either to my colleague Fanny or to me. Of course, we would be more than pleased to discuss that with you for sure. So once again, thank you very, very much for your attention. I would be more than pleased to answer or to try to answer your your question. Thank you very, very much.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Professor Breyer, for this excellent presentation. I'm sure that it was greatly appreciated by our audience, and now I would like to move on to questions. Maybe I will start with this first one while people are typing their question in the Q&A box. So, based on your results, muscle strength appeared to be a determinant of healthy aging in this population. How can muscle strength be increased in older adults?
That's a very, very good point. I would say that if I take into account the current recommendation, we need to perform some high intensity training with a high weight and so on, and maybe that I can share with you probably one of my favorite studies. Let's be clear, it's not a study of our group, but it's a study that I always share when I discuss improvement of muscle strength. So to make a long story short, and I slightly modified the study, but basically they compare two groups of patients with the objective to increase the muscle strength of the patient. And we've got one group with a training, with a high intensity, with huge weight for the patient. And if I remember quite well, it was a 2 series of 10 repetitions at 80% of the maximal strength, and the other group was only 1 series of 100 repetitions, but only of 20% of the maximal muscle strength of the patient. So in one group, very, very difficult exercises, and the other one, very, very easy exercises. And of course that when we'll have a look at the muscle strength of the patient after 2 months, there is a huge difference in the muscle strength between the 2 groups. So clearly, we've got a much more improvement in the high intensity group compared to the low intensity group. The increase was 45% in one group. However, even in the other group, the improvement was 20%. Of course, it's only half of the improvement observed in the first group, but it's still very, very high. You will never have in the next 15 years a drug that will be able to improve the strength of your patient by 20%. So clearly, it's a huge improvement. So my point is that, of course, if the patient is willing to perform some high intensity interval training, that's good, that's better. But if it's not possible, if the patient would like to perform some quite easy exercise, it's always good. So I think that especially in nursing home, of course that we need to motivate the patient, but if the patient is only willing to do some easy exercise, it's better than nothing, and the improvement in muscle strength will still be significant.
Thank you. I have a question from a participant asking you, how do you handle the fracture in your study when you assess frailty in this population? This person is mentioning that he is assuming that fracture and frailty don't have an equal definition in your study.
That's a very important point. The first thing is that, of course, that we had in mind to assess fracture during the follow-up of the study. However, and unfortunately, we were only able to assess non-vertebral fracture, so mainly fracture of the hip. And unfortunately, we have a very, very low incidents of hip fractures. So we were not able to have to perform some statistical analysis on that. On the other side, we have the feeling that we have much more vertebral fracture, but because patients are resident in nursing home, they do not go very often to the hospital even to perform some physical exam. For example, that's why when we would like to perform some assessment of muscle mass or of muscle strength, we need to take some portable apparatus. So unfortunately, we have not been able to perform some assessment of the vertebral fracture of the patient.
Thank you. So Dr. Bock is asking kind of this, another question related to this one. I think the first one is, do you have any data on hip fracture and other fractures? I think you already answered.
We've got, but not enough to perform some analysis for sure.
And then he's asking if you have any particular recommendations for fracture prevention in nursing home residents.
Let's be clear. I think that we need to prevent falls. Clearly, I think that's the most important. And from what we can see from the different scientific literature, one of the main risk factors for fall is body balance. And we've got also very interesting data in nursing homes suggesting that if we would like to have an improvement or a decrease in the risk of fracture and falls, we need to perform body balance exercises. So clearly, I really like to target the muscle, but I think that body balance is even more important for nursing home residents, because I think that the falls of the patient is of primary importance. So I would say that I would give if I have to prescribe something, I would say 60% on body balance and 40% on muscle strength.
Thank you. One participant is asking if you can explain again how did you measure sarcopenia in your cohort? That I think was one of your first
yes,
slides.
for sure. We assess sarcopenia with the grip strength, with the walking speed, and with muscle mass assessed with bioimpedance analyzer. That's why we use. And at that time we use the definition of the European Working Group, but the first definition of 2009. Probably that would not have exactly the same results with the definition of 2019. If I may, I come back to the previous discussion regarding prevention of fracture. I would say that clearly the nutrition could also play a very important role, and we've got some data on the non-resident of nursing homes suggesting that nutrition can play a very important role. I think it's always much more complex in nursing home, where the food is much more standardized, and probably that's it gives us less possibility to have a real target in the nutrition in nursing home residents. Of course, that sometimes we could have a prescription of nutritional supplementation, but it's not that frequent in nursing home in Belgium. So, and clearly, as you can see from our previous slide, it's very, very complex to increase the food intake of the patient. So I would say that it can be a very important thing for the prevention of fracture, but in nursing home, from a practical point of view, it's more complex because it does not involve only the resident or the family, but also the dietitian, and people making the food. So I think it's much more complex in nursing homes.
I think this is linked. Thank you. This is linked to the next question. It's like, do you have data on how effective it is to combine nutrition and physical activity in preventing frailty?
Yeah. From what we can see in the scientific literature, physical activity is very important, and nutrition is important. It means that it's probably that nutrition alone is probably not enough to really fight against frailty. It's very, very important for sure, but I think it should be always be given together with physical activity prescription. So clearly we've got data suggesting that if we can use both, it can be very, very interesting. On the other side, we've got also data suggesting that nutrition alone, with specific product, with high protein intake, could play some very interesting role. But once again, in nursing home, it's much more complex because it's in addition to the food intake. We need to have usually, at least in Belgium, a family member coming during the afternoon or the evening to give a supplementation. But some supplementation with high quality product could play some interesting role in the management of frailty.
And now maybe the last question before concluding this webinar. It's again a question from Dr. Bach. Are you planning to do an interventional study with fracture outcome in your nursing homes?
To be honest, no. Maybe with another outcomes, but in nursing home it's very complex to have an assessment of fracture, and if we have an assessment of non-vertebral fracture, the incidence is not that high, and we need to include a huge number of individuals. Of course, that if we've got some sponsor accepting to investigate that, I would be more than pleased. But clearly, most of the studies that I've shared with you, it's studies that we've performed with a very, very low budget. So we are not able to include much more patients. But of course, that if we are able to have some funding to have a large clinical trial with fracture as an outcome, we would be more than pleased to do that. So probably that I can discuss with Dr. Berg.
Thank you. So now I think it's time to conclude. I would like to thank all of you for your participation in this webinar. You will receive the link to the recording by email tomorrow, which will be active for 3 days. And you will be prompted to fill in a survey immediately after this webinar. We would appreciate your input and comments. And if you have any questions, comments, please do not hesitate to send them at webinar@osteoporosis.foundation. On behalf of IOF and SPO, I would like to thank you again, Professor Breuer, for this outstanding presentation, and goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.